Hello and welcome back to the Toffee Blues YouTube channel, your source for all things Everton. My name is Thomas, back with another opposition view. Obviously, the last one we did of these only a couple of days ago against Burnley. That didn't end up going too well. So hoping for a slightly better result this weekend. Almost a tougher prospect. Joined by Joe from the Stretford Paddock, of course, Manchester United, coming up on Saturday. Joe, thanks for coming on. How are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm good, mate. How are you doing?
Following the result last night.
All things considered.
Recorded. Yeah, look, it's not going ideal for ourselves. Obviously, not ideal for yourselves either in quite a different way. We've had, we've both had disappointment in different senses, but I'm hoping maybe we can slightly take advantage of you've got less. Well, you're still fighting for top four, of course, but kind of less going for you than we do. But anyway, we'll start off with what's your general thoughts on United this season? Of course, it's been quite a disappointing one.
Yeah, it's been disappointing, I'd say, was the big thing. It's been the first season in a while where we've really gone under expectation. Because I think most United fans, 2 or 3 seasons ago when Ollie came in, we understood that challenge for a couple of trophies, top four, as much as that's not where we want to be, that's where we kind of accepted that we were. We weren't good enough to challenge City. We weren't good enough to challenge Liverpool. So, Ollie finishing third and then second, that was improvement. And, maybe not quite at the speed people wanted. And losing the Europa League final wasn't ideal, of course, but there was improvement on the season before, if nothing else. This year is the first time where, in a couple of years where you've just gone, it's just fallen apart. We expected top four to be comfortable as it has been the last couple of years. Not only is top four not comfortable, it's looking very unlikely. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer got sacked halfway through the season. Then we had an interim caretaker. Then we've had an interim manager. It's just been, everything you don't want off the field, really. And the on the field stuff has matched it. So really poor from United this season. One of the seasons that, we hate to see, but have almost come to expect from United in the last decade. Every couple of years, we have one of these where we need a rebuild. And that's what we're seeing.
Yeah, and you mentioned the situation you had with your interim and then your caretaker interim and all that's gone on. But we'll focus on Rangnick anyway, because came in with a lot of reputation, not necessarily a managerial reputation, but one for building clubs, definitely. But he was thrown in the managerial role, and he seems to be staying on in some sort of advisory role after this. But what have you made of him?
I like him. And I think he's brought a lot of good things to United. I think he's brought a bit of honesty around the players that we could all see were struggling, and we could see were maybe not putting the effort in that we would come to expect from any club, let alone Manchester United. He kind of drew attention to that and wasn't afraid to tell the truth on those things. I think that's a very good thing, especially when it comes to building sort of fan and player kind of, not necessarily relationships, but just honesty, knowing what is going on. And he's done that very well. I think the one thing, we've struggled a little bit with certain periods under him where, in terms of XG, and it's all a bit, silly Twitter stuff, XG, but part of me looks at that and you think we've massively underperformed in games in front of goal, where there were certain games, the Southampton game, the Middlesbrough game in the FA Cup, which, we completely dominated these games and we didn't win them. And I don't think you can blame the manager for that. I think he's actually done better in terms of coaching the players than the results have shown. But at the end of the day, it's a results business. And luckily for him, he's not particularly bound by these results. He was leaving at the end of the season anyway, barring a miracle. He was never going to get the full-time job. So I think he almost had a bit of a free hit. He can analyse the squad. He can advise, as a result of that. But I think that he's done a good job. Maybe not a great job, but a decent job.
Yeah, definitely. I think it looks like that from the outside anyway. And as I mentioned, he's not going to be the manager come the end of the season. He will kind of move into a more background role, which I'm sure is a fairly exciting prospect as well, because we've seen the success he's had elsewhere. And you will be having a new manager. It seems like it's going to be Ten Hag from Ajax. Was he maybe somewhere near the top of your list of preferences for next season?
Yeah, of the options available, again, the problem any manager is going to have is they are coming up against Klopp and Guardiola and Tuchel. That's the issue. And can you pick a manager anywhere in the world that you are confident can beat those three with the resources they have, with the squads that they have, and the time they've been afforded and the time they've earned with their squads? Can you tell me a manager anywhere that could beat them with any guarantee? No, you couldn't. So there's always going to be that risk. There's always going to be that thing of you've got to beat the best, one of the best of all time in Guardiola and one of the best of the modern era in Jurgen Klopp. You've got to beat them to win the Premier League. And that's going to be a struggle. But I think Ten Hag's got the excitement. He's got that potential. He's on an upward trajectory with Ajax, which, you can't really say the same for Pochettino, who seemed to be the main candidate. he did pretty well at Tottenham and never quite got the trophy that maybe his performances deserved. He did okay with PSG and didn't win the league last year, which wasn't very good, and probably will this year, but then has sort of stumbled out of the Champions League very early on. So he wasn't particularly exciting. I think Ten Hag for me, yeah, he was my number one choice, and he's going to have a difficult job on his hands. But who else is better equipped to deal with it than him?
Yeah, no, I do agree with that as well. And moving on to our managerial situation, anyway, of course, we started the season with Benitez. That wasn't ideal. We've moved on to Lampard. Hasn't exactly set the world alight. So what have you made of Everton so far this season, and maybe specifically the managerial choices we've been making?
Yeah, I mean, the Benitez one always was baffling. That's like, United. Well, it's like United getting Benitez. That's what it is. It's a very direct comparison. It's like Man United appointing Rafa Benitez. And the problem with Benitez is not only, obviously, did he manage Liverpool in what was their second most successful period in the last 30 years, he doesn't do good football. So even at his best, you weren't going to be getting some swashbuckling, exciting, let's go down and watch the team. Yes, it's Benitez, but it doesn't matter because we're scoring 3 goals every week. If it had worked completely to plan, you would have played stifling, difficult to beat football, and you would have maybe conceded 0.6 goals, 0.7 goals per game. Like it was never going to work, because as soon as the wheels started to fall off, you've got the background and the basis for him is defensive, sort of turgid football. So as soon as it started to go wrong, everything just went against him. And I don't quite understand how that decision happened. Again, looking from the outside in, I don't really see why Lampard was chosen either. But it doesn't seem to be, I was speaking to another Everton fan just recently, and he was saying how he wouldn't have picked Lampard from the options everywhere in the world, but from the 3 you were kind of given to choose from, by the end of it, he was probably the best one available. So it's a tricky one for Lampard, and I do feel a little bit sorry for him, but I don't quite think he's that good. I just think he's a decent manager who can do decent things, and that's about it. And I think the way Everton have been run in recent years and the way that the team is playing at the moment, you needed something more than decent. You needed a good manager to turn it around, because it's a team that seems to be in free fall, which is so odd. I mean, obviously, neither of us, it doesn't really matter how old you are, you've not seen Everton get relegated before. So it's a tricky situation that you can't really believe. But I'm a little bit surprised at some of the decisions, especially Benitez. That just made no sense from the very start to me. What did you make of that? Because it was just such a shock in the summer, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Sorry, it was a silly decision, really.
Yeah.
So purely because he was only going to be given time if he had success, and obviously something that hasn't been particularly synonymous with Everton over the past 20, 25 years, 27 years is success. We haven't won a trophy, so the only way that Benitez was really going to succeed is if he picked up momentum. He was picking up wins. He gave us potentially a trophy, had us in Europe. That was probably never going to happen anyway, considering the group players. If Ancelotti couldn't do it, Rafa Benitez couldn't do it at the end of the day, and it was a daft decision. It set us back, definitely. I mean, the match that he was sacked was a loss to Norwich. I would give anything to try and play Norwich again this season, Peter, because we have this very tricky run in coming up. And in Norwich is a game that in theory we would win now, but we lost to them then, and that's why we are in the position we are. And Lampard coming in, I think he's a decent manager, but in terms of relegation battle, it's not exactly going to plan. But in terms of yourselves, as we mentioned, kind of a disappointing season. I'm sure there's been a couple of standouts. So maybe who's been your standout player, and who's maybe disappointed you?
In terms of standouts, there's almost been like 3 sections to the season for United, or certainly 2. There's the sort of Ole section and the Rangnick section. I think you almost have to separate those 2 out, because beforehand, I think under Ole, the people that were impressing was basically Varane, and that's about it. De Gea looked pretty good earlier on in the season as well, some of his shot stopping. But other than that, no one looked any good. And I think since Rangnick's come in, we have seen certain players improve. Fernandes has certainly improved, and maybe not quite back to his best, but he's back in the goals, he's scoring. I think we've seen a lot more out of Diogo Dalot at right back. He's been someone that's impressed me in the second half of the season. But Sancho's the main one that's really pushed on since Rangnick's come in. I think looks like he's playing with a lot more freedom. His dribbling, the way he approaches defenders, and his passing ability has really been good. And in terms of biggest disappointment, it would have to be Marcus Rashford, I think. Last couple of years, getting 20 goals plus 2 seasons in a row, which, for any winger anywhere in the world, you're getting 20 goals, you're doing very well. And this season, it's just been, completely ineffective in almost every game he's played. I know he's coming back from a prolonged injury and surgery, but you'd think by now he could be hitting some of that form again. So it's a shame for him, and hopefully he'll get it back. And maybe he needs a new manager and some more confidence. But I would say probably Rashford's been the biggest disappointment this season.
Yeah, that's really curious one for me, kind of from the outside looking in. Rashford, I mean, we all know about him. Everyone in England knows about Marcus Rashford at the end of the day. But what would you kind of put that down to then? Is it the injury? Is it, well, just a combination of everything?
Yeah, I think some of it can be blamed on the injuries, and maybe I'm being sort of optimistic for his sake. I don't think it's all injuries, because if it was injuries, that wouldn't explain why his decision making was so poor, and it wouldn't just explain why his run making and his showing for the ball and these sorts of things were so poor. Maybe if he's lost half a yard of pace, or he has pain where he turns, or when he sprints, something you can understand that affecting it in a certain way. But it's just his decision making that's been so bad at the moment. I think it must be confidence, and for some reason, I think certainly in the modern era of football, the last sort of 5 or 10 years, where everything is slowly become so much more focused on stats and detail, and quite rightly so as well. But I think in the 90s, punditry would be, he's having a good game, keep him playing, look at what a great day he's having. And now punditry is 3 passes completed, 4 shots, 3 dribbles, it's all detail. And I think sometimes you forget that confidence is one of the biggest things in football. You can have a team that plays really badly one week or one season, they get a new manager in, there's a bit of a shake-up, they start a season well, they get a bit of luck, and next thing you know, they're Leicester and they've won the league. Like, the confidence is so massive, and I think he's just playing with absolutely zero confidence at the moment. And I think maybe there's still something going on with those injuries, but I just think his head's not quite right at the moment. And I don't mean, I just mean confidence. I think we can get that back, and maybe next season with the right manager, we'll see the best of Marcus Rashford again.
Yeah, that would be interesting to see if he can kick on again. But, well, kind of looking at injury suspensions, I mean, we've been plagued with injuries this season, as everyone has. That's not an excuse for us. But at the moment, what kind of is your likely lineup going to be? Is there anyone significant missing?
Cavani's always missing, so I don't know if you'd call him significant. He just decides when he wants to play, when he doesn't. There was a point before the international break where Rangnick came out and said he's been training for 3 days in a row this week, and then he wasn't even on the bench the next game. He was just like, yeah, I went training, but I can't really be bothered to play on Saturday. So you lads have a good game. I'll see you on Monday back in training again. So he's not available. As far as I'm aware, Rangnick could maybe surprise me. You never know with Cavani. Hopefully Ronaldo will be back. That was the big one. He was unavailable last week against Leicester. Hopefully he'll be back. But other than that, it's a largely available squad for United, which is obviously, favourable.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, we are a team that kind of struggles to hurt any opposition that we come up against at the moment. I'm not sure if you watched the match last night, but it was
I've watched most
ridiculous
of it.
to watch. Yeah, I mean, only 2 penalties, not even creating a goal ourselves. But where can we potentially hurt United? If you forget about Everton's weaknesses, forget about all that, where would you say is your biggest weakness on your side?
Set pieces is still one where I don't feel completely confident. I think Varane has helped that, and Maguire, as you know, is if you watched England at all in the last couple of years, is brilliant in the air. That's one thing that I don't think anyone would knock him at. He's fantastic at winning defensive headers, and Varane's pretty good at that as well. So, but I do think you put a bit of pressure on De Gea, you can maybe see some cracks there. Crowd the box, just make it a little bit of carnage at the near post, and we have struggled with that in recent seasons, and it's still not something I'm particularly in love with in terms of how United defend. The other thing is, and he may not play, but Luke Shaw this season just doesn't seem to want to track back anymore. So maybe you could get some joy down that right hand side, or your right hand side, our left hand side, and play things in that way. We again, from both sides, we struggle to defend crosses, low crosses to the back post. So that would be my sort of my main ways. I reckon Everton can kind of capitalise on United's weaknesses.
Yeah, it'll be interesting, because I'm sure if you asked any Everton fan one of our biggest weaknesses, it would be set pieces as well. So I'm not sure we'll see any specialities come Saturday.
Stalemate.
But looking at the rest of the season, then yourselves still push over top 4, even though it's a very narrow window now. It seems there's almost four teams going for that final spot. Ourselves try not to be relegated. What are your predictions for the rest of the season for both United and Everton?
For United, I think it'll be maybe a near miss. I think Tottenham look like they've got more momentum than us. I know Arsenal lost to Palace. Well, they got battered, let's be honest, by Palace the other day, but I think they've still got more momentum than United. It seems to matter more to them. Top 4 is a prize for them, whereas United, it's just, we've had top 4 the last couple of seasons, and what have we made of it? Nothing. One of the top 4s we got ended up being a Europa League run, and the other one we got knocked out in the first round to Atletico Madrid. So I think maybe the United players aren't quite so enamoured with the whole top four idea as maybe Arsenal players are. So I think it seems to matter more to them at the moment. Again, though, it's not over. Like you said, the window's closing, but we're 4 points behind, and they've got a game in hand. It's not crazy. It's not crazy to think that could be overturned. But again, I don't quite have the faith in United at the moment. So I think we'll probably finish 5th or 6th. In terms of Everton, I don't know. If you'd have asked me this a month ago, I'd say no way, they'll pull away from it. I don't think Lampard's a great coach, but all he needs to do is get 2 or 3 wins in the next 8 or 10 games, and you'll probably stay up. The Burnley game was massive yesterday, and I would be slightly worried if I was an Everton fan at the moment, as I'm sure you are. Especially with the running you've got. I think they've got Norwich at the weekend, haven't they, Burnley? It's one of those, the mode that Everton are in currently, and the sort of free fall nature of it is almost like if you go into the bottom 3, I'd struggle to see you getting back out of it. I think you kind of have to stay on that sort of precipice and not go down there. I do think overall you'll probably just have too much. I think your squad is better than Burnley's and Watford's, but I think it's going to be really close.
I agree with that kind of slipping into the bottom 3. It's easy to say when you're in a relegation battle if you haven't been in the relegation zone. And there was a point last night where we were 7 points clear of Burnley. Now all of a sudden they're 1 point behind us. We play ourselves. They've got Norwich at the weekend. We could be 2 points behind and in the relegation zone come Monday. So it is a terrifying prospect. To be honest,
do you think you'll go down? Do you think you'll go down?
It's really tricky to say, because I think if you look at sides that have gone down the past 2, everyone's kind of said they are too good to go down. It can just be, we aren't in the relegation zone until 2 matches to go, and then we don't get out of it. Look, we haven't been literally in the bottom 3 for, the majority of the season. I can't even think of a time where we have genuinely slipped inside it. So it's a weird one that it kind of seems like, oh, we're not going to get down, we are going to get out of it. But we could all of a sudden, a couple of games to go, even as I mentioned, past this weekend, we could just slip into the relegation zone, not quite get out of it, because we've got Chelsea coming up, Arsenal, yourselves, Liverpool, Leicester twice. We do have then Watford and Brentford towards the end of the season. It's looking precarious, because Burnley and Watford just do have better fixtures than us, and Burnley are a side who, they do this well. They don't do it every season, to be fair to them, but they've done it before in the past couple of seasons. They know how to get out of it. Dyche knows how to get out of it, and this is kind of this is what they do. This is their speciality, and it's certainly not ours. If you look at a group of players who you want to show a bit of a bit of backbone, but I don't know. I am slightly scared that it will just be kind of, we're not in the relegation zone all season. All of a sudden, a couple results go our way, we end up in there, and we just end up going down because we just never really go out of it. But we're kind of focusing on the match of the weekend anyway. As I mentioned, we can talk about all. We might be 2 points behind Burnley. We might be all this, that. Yep. It's important for both of us in different ways. But how do you see the match going? Have you got any particular score predictions?
In terms of score, the way I think it's going to go, and it was, like I said, I was speaking to an Everton fan about this, and he kind of said, it's almost like United and Everton have a lot of similarities at the moment, the way the club's being ran. I think some of the, meddling from the owners is slightly more toxic at Everton from what I've heard, but, the structure above the manager isn't good. The players don't seem to really care when they're on the pitch. There's a massive lack in confidence, a lack in motivation from the players. But I think United's players are just better than Everton's, player for player. I think we're in a similar position to you, but our players are just better. And so I think if you rolled the dice on the performance 10 times, I think United would probably win 7 or 8 of those and maybe a couple of draws. And I think Everton might sneak a win, if we played each other 10 times. But I worry with United that when we tend to play teams that seem to be hopeless or in free fall or really struggling the way Everton are, we drop points in recent seasons. We did it against Sheffield United last season. We lost to them when I think they had 13 points on the table. We dropped points to Norwich. We dropped points. We got battered 4-1 by Watford earlier in the season. It was Ole Solskjaer's last game. So it wouldn't surprise me if United did drop points. But I just think hopefully there'll be enough pride in our players where the quality should tell, the difference in quality should tell, and United will win 2-0. What do you think?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, purely because both sets of players will be under pressure, obviously. As much as you mentioned before, the United players aren't exactly enamoured by the top 4 prospect. There is still pressure, of course. Manchester United should not be in the Europa League, should not be in the Europa Conference League either. It'd be interesting to see what happens there. But my only thought is, if the game goes against yourselves, your players won't freeze. They won't necessarily get nervous. They'll be playing with less pressure. It'll be different pressure, but I think it'll be less. We'll be at home.
Yeah.
We know we need points. But as we saw against Burnley last night, we freeze. That's what we do. We just heads are down immediately. So I think it'll be a different kind of a different prospect if either one of us goes ahead at any point, and that's what scares me. But I think the atmosphere at Goodison will be interesting, to say the least, because it's almost like, we know it can be toxic, but it's like, this is all we can do now. We've just got to get behind them, because there's no point in being toxic now. That's not really going to help anyone. So it'll be interesting to see how the fans react, especially if we do go behind early on, as we did last night. And we did show a bit of bottle for portions of the game to go back ahead. But then again, you lose that all, your heads are down, and you've just lost 3-2 to Burnley. So it's a very strange situation. I can see us maybe getting a point. I can't see it being a particularly exciting game, purely because I think we'll be nervous. Not the United players will be nervous, maybe just less interested, perhaps coming towards the end of the season. I'll go for a score draw 1-1. But to be honest, I also predict us to beat Burnley, so I've got absolutely no idea. But that does bring us to kind of towards the end of my questions anyway.
Yeah, great.
It is a terrifying prospect going forwards, but we'll see you on the weekend. Anyway, Joe, thank you very much for coming on. If our viewers want to find more of you, where can they find you?
Over on Stretford Paddock on YouTube, or at Joe Smith 93 on Twitter. Thank you very much for having me on. And yeah, 1-1. If you're not sure, always predict 1-1 with United, because that seems to be our favourite scoreline at the minute. So I'm not going to disagree with that.
I'd certainly take that going forwards. But as I mentioned, thank you all very much for watching. Let us know your score predictions down below as well, and join us next time on the Toffee Blues. Goodbye.